Morning YouTube, ACDodd here again. You join me on the road, and this time we're heading southwest. So we've actually got an appointment in Yeovil, and we've also got an appointment somewhere in Somerset. So we've got 2 minutes. Let's dig into it. So here we are. We're in Yeovil, and we've got this nice little road racer. So let's have a quick look at inside. Nice little car. Under the bonnet we have 1275 base engine. I don't think there's anything special going on here, but the only issue we've got at the moment is it's a non-runner. So with that in mind, we don't know where we are, so we've got to dig in and try and find out why it doesn't start. Okay, yeah, coming out to a non-starter is always a risk, because you never know what you're going to find or what condition things are in. So as we'll see later on, this particular engine is not well. So without further ado, let's get back on and see where we go. So working on a cold engine, as you can see, I'll just prove that that's dead cold. So that's 20 degrees ambient temperature. So we've not started this up yet. So what I'm basically doing is having a quick look through. So the carburetor top's off, and the reason why that is it gives me ideas of what's going on. So I can see the jet there is it's a bit lower than it should be. So I'm assuming, I'm suspecting this is running a little bit rich. So we'll pull some plugs out now, and then we'll carry on with the conventional work once we deduce what's going on. So as you can see, I've already got the plugs out, but we'll look at those in a minute. But the first thing I found is it got a broken wire. So the reason why it won't start, certainly this morning, is as our wire's hanging out. So we'll get that wire connected, and then we'll sort these plugs out. And as I suspected, we've got dark, rich running plugs. We've also got massive plug gaps. So this engine's running conventional points ignition, so I can see why this would have a starting problem. So we'll get a new set of plugs, we'll gap them, and then let's go and have a look at the coil. Okay, so let's start going through the engine as normal. Check the coil, should be, I reckon, 3 ohms. Yep, we've got a nice 3 ohm coil on there. So that's ideal. We're running points ignition, so no ballast. So this is ideal for this particular car. At the moment, I'm not interested in upgrading or changing anything. I want to get the engine running properly. So in order to do that, I need to make sure that everything fitted is correct. We've got standard points on there at the moment. One of the things I want to do is get the engine running and then determine if the advance curve's any good, because that might mean that's the point we upgrade the ignition, etc. So just at the moment is to get the car running. So we still haven't started the engine yet, but what I have done is I've fixed the connection to the coil. I've got a new set of plugs in, they're all gapped. What I've also done is I've leaned off the carburetor as well, because what I don't want to do is, if this starts, I don't want to foul up the new plugs. The other thing is, while the top's off, if we have a look at that, we can clearly see there's insufficient oil. So I'm going to top this up before I put it back on. So I can already tell that this engine, when it did start, was going to be running poorly, because it was rich and then it had no damper effect on it. So this would have been very, very lean, fall flat on its face when you try and drive anywhere. So I think this one's going to turn around quite nicely. But let's carry on with the tune and see how we get on. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a cold start and see if it actually works. Success! She fired up straight away. So now we can crack on with a tune. Or maybe not. Unfortunately, this engine, as we'll now see, had many problems. So least of which was the ability of the carburetor to actually function properly, and also use of a fuel pump on there, which meant that the supply pressure to the carburetor was much too high. So yeah, this caused me a lot of problems. I didn't actually get all the footage, but what I did get is the key parts of why this vehicle couldn't be tuned. So let's get into that. Okay, there's our problem. We're getting 6 psi of fuel pressure, and that's because we've got a pattern pump fitted. These things are terrible. If you've got one of these type pattern cheek pumps fitted to an engine, they're problems. So I recommend fitting a genuine SU pump and a fuel pressure regulator, and then we stand a chance of actually getting this engine to work properly. So for today, I can't do any more with this engine because I can't change the carburetor, because I know with that much fuel pressure it's going to leak. I also know that with my new carburetors that I sell with the big bore needle valve, with that much pressure it's going to leak. So unfortunately I can't do any more for the tune today. So there we go, too much fuel pressure and a few other problems as well, which I'll detail in a minute. But the most important thing to understand here is I can't fix everything when I'm out on the road. So this particular owner knew that the car wasn't working properly, and he wanted me to come down and obviously assess it and then give him my view. Now clearly if I was able to tune that, then I would have done. But in this case, as we'll see just in a second when I give an overview, there were too many parts that needed to be fitted to be able to get this one working. So in this particular case, I just wanted to put it in the video here so people can see that, you know, if I come out to a car and it's got these many faults, all I can do is give advice, because I can't tune the engine because it's unable to be tuned, if that makes sense. So in this particular case, carry on and see the next part of the video for the summary of the actual parts that needed to be fitted to make this car work. Okay, so to wrap this one up, yeah, we haven't been able to tune it, so and I'll go through that in a minute, but there's a few other issues. Obviously we did the broken wire, new set of spark plugs, gapped them at 25 thou. You will notice the fan's on the wrong way, so that needs to be changed by the owner. But the biggest issue is obviously that fuel pump is delivering too much pressure. As I say, I don't carry fuel pumps with me. I advertise myself as car needs to be ready for tuning. In this particular case, the car isn't ready for tuning, but what I was able to do is to tell the owner the work it needs to be able to get this working. So in this case, a new fuel pump, also needs a fuel pressure regulator, also needs a rebuilt carburetor, and the manifold studs are all bent on the back. So I'm also suggesting the owner takes all the manifolds off, reseals that, pays attention to the manifold thicknesses, the flanges, and make sure they're all flat so the thing actually goes together and seals properly. So as I say, there's a fair bit of work for the owner to do on this one, but in reality we will get there. So with that in mind, it's time to move on to the next car. Okay, so some of you might remember this one. I was here a couple of years ago for this nice automatic Mini 30. Lovely car. And you might be wondering why I'm back. So let's go and have a look under the bonnet. And here's the engine. As we can hear, it's running absolutely sweetly. So you might think, why am I back after 2 years? Well, in reality, I'm back because we actually need to give the engine a bit of a service and a quick check over, and the owner's also reported it's not necessarily starting wonderfully well when it's cold. So let's have a dig in and see what we can find. Okay, so nicely into this one. I've just checked the voltage at the coil, that's all good. The cold start's working. So as I said there, the owner is saying it's not perfectly starting when it's cold. It takes a few cranks. So what I have already found though is I've measured the dwell angle, and our points gap is large, so that means our dwell angle small, which actually means we've got about 20% less coil energy than we should have. So what we're going to do is adjust those, and then obviously let's have a look at the spark plugs. So taking a look at the spark plugs, these have only got a couple of 100 miles on. Interesting, so we could already see, I've been here before because the plugs are actually relatively clean, but they are slightly different across each one. So the first two don't look too bad, and then 3 and 4 look a little bit discoloured. So normally, forget the coloration, but the fact they're different normally indicates that we have a coil power issue, which, fun enough, we have mentioned that we're down a little bit on coil energy from the points gap. So we'll sort the points gap out. I'm also going to check the gap on these. They look pretty reasonable, but they should be 25 thou. So we'll check those. I'm not going to put a new set in this case in because they're clean. We'll just gap them and put them straight back in. So, two things there. The dwell angle is small, which means the points gap is a bit big. That has the effect of reducing the coil charge time. I actually mentioned 20% there. It's actually more like 26% in terms of where it should be. But so my point is there's quite an appreciable reduction in the coil power. And one thing you need to understand with a classic car is that uses a conventional ignition system, you've barely got enough ignition power to run the engine properly anyway. So any reduction, even 10%, is noticeable. Certainly when it comes to combusting the fuel and getting decent lambda readings. So in this particular case, with nearly 26% down on where it should be, it's going to make a huge difference, especially to the cold starting. So that with points, that'll also affect the cold starting. So even though you've got a ballast resistor on this car because it's a point system, you're still 26% behind the curve. So it's really important to be able to set your points accurately. So what's happened in this particular case is the owner himself has fitted new points since I was there last time, and because he hasn't set the gap properly on the points, he's reduced the coil power, which causes a problem with starting. So looking at the spark plugs, we can also see that coil power because we can now see that there's different colours. We've also got the second problem, the compounding the issue of not enough power, and that is that the gap has not been set correctly. So people will see that I'm always banging on about spark plug gaps, but this is exactly my point. When you're working on an engine, and this owner has done the right thing and tried to service his car himself, change the points, change the plugs, but he hasn't been able to accurately set those gaps and set the points properly, which is the problem in this case. Okay, got the engine going again. Spark plug gaps were quite large. They were definitely over 30 thou, so I've knocked them down to 25 thou. The owner has just said to me, doesn't know why he didn't gap them at 25, but there we go, because obviously I was here before. The other thing is I've just checked the timing, and we've actually got 21 degrees at idle, which is obviously also an indication that our dwell angle isn't correct, purely because when the dwell angle is small, it advances the timing. So I've just asked the owner, he hasn't touched this distributor since I was here before, so all he's done is replace the points and set the gap. So what I'm now going to do is reset that gap properly, and I reckon the timing will come back into where I set it a couple of years ago. So let's do that, and hopefully that's the end of our cold starting issues. That's a good point here, which I'm raising. People are not aware of is when your dwell angle isn't correct, it actually affects the timing setting. So what the owner had done is when he put his points in, he'd set them what he believed to be correct, but actually the timing was 16 degrees advanced compared to where I'd left it. So it was a massive change in ignition timing, and that's something to understand. So you can end up running the engine and pinking and rattling purely because there's wear in the points or you've set them incorrectly. So in this particular case, once I'd reset the points, the timing went exactly back to where I'd set it previously because the distributor itself hadn't been moved. Right, so engine's back running. As I said, gap the plugs. I've also set the dwell angle. So we've gone from 44 degrees up to 56 degrees. The first thing we noticed was when we turned the key, engine fired up straight away. All right, rather than sort of cough and go for a few revolutions. So instantly, what I can tell from this one is actually what's happened here is the owner himself has induced a little bit of a bit more poor performance than perhaps what we should have by not setting the points gap properly, and obviously setting the plugs gap too wide. And that's one of the reasons why you always see me on videos shouting at people to set their plug gap. But obviously setting the points gap accurately is important as well, because if you don't have the points gap right, you won't necessarily have the optimum coil charge time, and you won't have the right spark energy going to your plugs. So this has just proved that. The other thing that's happened is, because I've set the dwell angle back to where I left it, the timing has corrected itself by 16 degrees, all right? So the timing has now come back into where it should be. This engine should now perform. So what I'm now going to do is go through, check the fuel in, make sure it's all right, and then it's ready for the test drive. Okay, so got the engine running, and I've just checked the fuel in. The fuel in, where I made the needle before, is absolutely spot on. So I only needed to do a very small change on the mixture screw, but then we found out that the dashboard oil is now too thin. So clearly that was right a few years ago. I don't believe the owner's changed this at all. There's plenty of oil in there, but now we are running a bit thin on the oil. So we're going to increase the oil to give a bit more fuel in on acceleration, and that should be ready to test drive. Okay, so yeah, the work required there was just a little bit more than change the oil. Once I changed the oil, the piston drop rate slowed down a lot. And actually, I didn't really get that much of an increase in the increase in the stiffness of the damper rise. So actually, what I had to do was to fit an LZX 2085 damper. Now that damper had no wear on it because obviously brand new, and that actually filled that damper tube up so well that it was then too stiff. So I had to drop the oil to compensate. But the end result was I ended up with a very fast drop damper and the correct rise rate to get the fuel enrichment on acceleration. Basically, the oil that I'd fitted in this car when I tuned it last was in October, and it was a much cooler. Now today it was about 20 degrees, much warmer day, and that had an effect on the piston damper, which was rising too quick, which was leaning out the fuel in on acceleration. So with that fixed, I finished up the tune. Okay, so got this one all done. So this is an auto engine. Interestingly, the carburetor was spot on from where I'd done it last time, but the only difference was I couldn't actually get enough enrichment on acceleration. And I think what happened last time is I tuned it towards the winter months where it was cooler. And in this case, I'm in the middle of summer, and the oil was too thin, so it was leaning out on acceleration. When I tried to enrich it by thickening the oil, it actually made the piston drop rate too slow because the damper wasn't independent of the oil grade. So what I've done is I've fitted a new 2085 damper in there, and I've gone in for some SAE 10 weight plain oil, and she's on the money. So we'll send the owner out in it now, and that should be as good as gold. Okay, test drive's been had. Plugs look lovely. Awesome. Okay, so this is Andy. Andy's the chap some of you might recognise from a couple of years ago, as he called me down to this nice Mini 30. How's it been running since I tuned it the first time?
Initially absolutely wonderful, but over the last year or so I've noticed that she wouldn't start in the mornings, struggled to start, but it would eventually start. Struggled to pull out of junctions, etc. I've changed the plugs, changed the points, and obviously I've got it wrong with the gaps, as has been proven. And now I've just taken it out for a test drive. Beautiful.
Okay, yeah. So the important thing to understand here is, as Andy's just alluded to, he changed the plugs and points, and he tried to do the right thing, but he ended up reducing the coil charge time, and obviously putting the gaps that were too big on the spark plug. One thing he didn't do was he didn't have any effect on the oil, so we had to change the damper in the carb and obviously the oil to match. But how is it now?
Oh, absolutely different car again. I think it's tuned better now than you tuned it first time round.
Yeah.
She picks up lovely, doesn't misfire, and a pleasure to drive now.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Now the interesting thing you say there is it goes better than it did the last time I tuned it. Well, that's because I've only got a fixed amount of time to work on the car, you see. So the first time I came here, if I remember, it was very poorly, so we had to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
This time, coming back, I was able to build on the stuff I'd done last time to make it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. I ummed and ahed whether to call you down. Calling you down was exactly the right thing to do because she runs a treat now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It is expensive to have me down, but the point is, as I said, actually you did need me down this time. So, and it's interesting to know that other owners, about every couple of years is a good time to call me back. Not that I need the business mind, but at the end of the day, if you want your car to be running right, that's about where we need to be. So, thank you very much for getting me down,
No worries.
and I'll see you hopefully in the future.
Yeah, thanks for coming down. Thank you.
Okay, so just one thing I did miss out there. I obviously showed the spark plug colour, which looked very good. But what I also did, and I didn't show it on camera, is I actually took all the spark plugs out and I showed the owner, and then we could see the funny discoloured ones had actually cleaned up. And that's because obviously we corrected the combustion that was going on in those cylinders. So obviously the quality of the combustion was better, so it started to show up on the plugs. So Andy there took the car out for a good test drive, so we were able to see that, which was which was what we wanted to see, and obviously that gave Andy the confidence that things were improving. So the important thing to understand is on that particular car there is the accuracy by which you set your points, and the gapping the plugs makes a big difference, because that engine started on the button once we'd finished that, and that's obviously exactly what you want. So hopefully you guys got something out of that video. Obviously with the two cars there, one showing an incompleted tune that couldn't be completed, and obviously going to a return customer who was obviously saying the car wasn't starting, and obviously a lot of the problems there, in fact the problems with the starting issue was purely the fitting of those components, and not necessarily getting those settings absolutely spot on. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. As ever, please like, subscribe, and obviously share these videos, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much.